Why we mistake ignorance for wisdom. The dark truth of human confidence. Script. What if I told you that the most dangerous people in the world are not the cruelest nor the most powerful, but the ones who are simply too blind to see their own ignorance? Think about it. The coworker who insists they're always right, even when they're wrong. The politician who speaks with thunderous certainty while their words crumble under scrutiny. The friend who gives reckless advice with absolute confidence, unaware of the harm they cause. And now ask yourself, how many times has that person been you? This is the secret shame of being human. The less we know, the more certain we feel. And the more we truly learn, the less we trust ourselves. This paradox isn't random, it has a name. Psychology calls it the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Philosophy calls it hubris. History calls it the seed of downfall. And you live it every single day. The illusion of knowing. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger revealed something uncomfortable. People with the least knowledge in a subject are often the most confident in their abilities. They tested students in logic, grammar, and humor. The worst performers consistently believed they had scored above average. Meanwhile, the top performers often underestimated themselves. It wasn't just ignorance, it was a blindness to ignorance. The less you know, the more complete your view of reality feels. Plato warned us about this long ago with his Allegory of the cave. The prisoners saw shadows on the wall and believed them to be truth. To them, the shadows were the entire world. They didn't know there was something beyond. That's the same blindness the Dunning-Kruger effect reveals today. When you know little, you mistake shadows for sunlight. You mistake fragments for truth. And worst of all, you believe you understand. The lemon juice robber. Let me tell you a story. In 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler walked into two banks in Pittsburgh and robbed them in broad daylight. No mask, no disguise, just a strange confidence. Hours later, police arrested him. He was stunned. "But I wore the juice," he said. Wheeler believed that rubbing lemon juice on his skin would make him invisible to security cameras, because lemon juice can be used as invisible ink. This act of absurd confidence caught the attention of psychologists. If Wheeler had known just a little more about science, he would have realized how impossible his plan was. But because he knew almost nothing, he couldn't see the flaw. That's the essence of the Dunning-Kruger trap, when you're too unskilled to recognize your lack of skill. And before you laugh at Wheeler, remember the times you've given advice you weren't qualified to give, the times you argued with certainty about topics you barely understood, the times you mistook your shadows for sunlight. Certainty is seduction. Why do we fall into this trap? Because certainty feels good. It gives us confidence in a chaotic world. It makes us feel strong, even when we are fragile. It gives us status. People admire the bold speaker more than the hesitant doubter. Nietzsche once said, "Convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies." Because conviction blinds us. It lulls us into thinking we've arrived at the final answer. And when you believe you found the truth, you stop searching, you stop listening, you stop learning. That is why fools are often loud and the wise are often quiet. Socrates, the wisest man in Athens, declared, "I know that I know nothing." His wisdom was not in answers, but in humility. The fool shouts. The wise man pauses. The fool argues. The wise questions. The herd in the throne history is full of arrogant leaders who mistook their ignorance for wisdom and dragged entire nations down with them. Machiavelli observed that power often rewards not the wise, but the bold, the liars, the narcissists, the fools. Why? Because the crowd mistakes confidence for competence. Nietzsche called this the herd mentality. People crave certainty. They want leaders who sound sure, even if their words are empty. We kneel before authority, not because it is right, but because it relieves us of the burden of thinking. From ancient Rome to modern democracies, from collapsing empires to corrupted regimes, the same pattern repeats. Confidence rises, ignorance rules, and the cost is paid in blood, chaos, and ruin. The collapse within us. But this isn't just about politics or history, it's about you. How many times have you ignored someone wiser because you thought you knew better? How many times have you sabotaged a relationship because you assumed you understood? How many times have you made reckless choices, blind to the limits of your own knowledge? The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just a study in psychology, it's a mirror. It forces us to see how arrogance creeps into our own lives, disguised as certainty. The journey through doubt. Ironically, the more you truly learn, the less confident you become. This is why so many brilliant minds suffer from imposter syndrome. The more knowledge you gain, the more aware you are of how much you don't know. At the start, ignorance gives you false confidence. Then as you grow, knowledge humbles you. You fall into the valley of doubt. But if you persist, if you keep learning, you eventually climb to a higher wisdom, where confidence and competence align. This is the path of growth, from ignorance to arrogance, from knowledge to doubt, from humility to wisdom. The Library of Shadows. Imagine a man entering a vast library. He picks up one book, reads a few pages, and suddenly believes he understands the world. That's the fool. Then he reads more and realizes the vastness of knowledge. He feels overwhelmed, small, even fraudulent. That's the doubter. Finally, after years, he masters a subject. Yet even then, he speaks humbly, because he knows the limits of his own mind. That is the wise. This is the journey every thinker, every seeker, every human must face. Breaking the trap. So how do we protect ourselves from the Dunning-Kruger trap? Cultivate humility. Begin every thought with the possibility that you might be wrong. Seek criticism. Surround yourself with those who challenge you, not flatter you. Keep learning. Every new piece of knowledge expands your vision and shrinks your arrogance. Embrace doubt. Doubt is not weakness. It is the birthplace of wisdom. Bonhoeffer, who resisted tyranny with his life, warned that stupidity is often more dangerous than malice. Because malice can be opposed, but stupidity, rooted in blind certainty, is immovable. This is why ignorance disguised as confidence is one of the greatest threats we face. Not just as individuals, but as humanity itself. The uncomfortable truth. Here's the twist. You will never fully escape this trap. Neither will I. Neither will anyone. Because no matter how much you learn, there will always be areas where you are blind. And in those blind spots, you will almost certainly overestimate yourself. But awareness changes everything. Once you see the pattern, you can laugh at your own arrogance. You can pause before declaring certainty. You can carry humility into every room you enter. The final reflection. So I'll ask you again, where in your life are you mistaking ignorance for wisdom? Where are you most certain, yet most blind? And do you have the courage to admit it? Because the world doesn't need more confident fools. It doesn't need more loud voices drowning out the cautious ones. It doesn't need more of us living in caves, mistaking shadows for truth. What the world needs, what your life needs, is the humility to question, the patience to listen, and the wisdom to doubt. Remember, the fool thinks he is wise. The wise man knows he is a fool. So which will you be?